The storm had been brewing all afternoon. Rain slapped hard against the diner's windows, as if trying to warn the people inside that something was coming. The bell above the door jingled once. No one paid attention. Not at first. Just another woman walking in, boots damp from the sidewalk, hair tied back tight, a gray hoodie pulled over her shoulders. She took the corner booth, the one by the window. The one most people avoided because it was always cold from the draft. She didn't seem to mind. She ordered black coffee. No cream, no sugar. Her voice was low, calm, practiced. The waitress nodded and walked away. The woman leaned back, eyes scanning the room without turning her head. Reflex, habit, old training that never left her bones. In her hand was a folded letter, the edges worn like it had been opened too many times. She opened it again. The ink was faded, the handwriting delicate. A mother's hand. The letter had been written before her last deployment, sealed in a plastic pouch like soldiers do with the things they can't afford to lose. Then the second bell rang. 3 men entered. Loud, laughing too hard. Reeking of beer and bad decisions. The kind of men who never grew out of high school. One had a black leather jacket, the kind with peeling patches that tried to look tough. The second wore a ball cap backward, and the third walked with a limp, but it didn't make him slow. They scanned the diner, eyes looking for something, or someone. The tables were mostly empty. Just a couple in the back, an old man eating soup and the woman in the corner booth. They saw her. The man in the cap grinned. They sat one table over, their voices louder than before, making comments just enough to make the waitress nervous. She glanced at the woman in the corner, then quickly looked away. She didn't know yet, but something was about to happen, something they wouldn't forget. The man with the jacket leaned toward the woman's table. His voice was playful, but with an edge that felt like a blade. "Hey, sweetheart, you always drink your coffee alone?" No answer. He laughed and nodded to his friend. The one in the cap got up and walked around her table slowly, dragging a finger along the wood. "What's in the letter?" he asked. "Love note from a boyfriend?" Still no answer. Her eyes didn't even flicker. That made the third man bold. He reached for the letter. In less than a second, her hand closed over his wrist. Firm, unmoving. Her grip tightened just enough to make him flinch. "Don't," she said. One word, cold and sharp. He tried to pull away. He couldn't. Her fingers dug into the pressure point just above his thumb. His knees bent involuntarily. The diner went quiet. Even the couple in the back looked up. "Let go of me." He growled. She did, and he stumbled back, rubbing his wrist. The first man rose from his seat, chest puffed, stepping toward her like he was about to teach her a lesson. 15 seconds. That's how long it took. She stood up. Not fast. Not flashy, just enough to get her footing. The man swung. A wide, clumsy arc. She ducked it. Grabbed his arm, twisted, a crack. He screamed and dropped to the floor. She used his own momentum to send him into the table behind him. Plates shattered. Coffee spilled. The second man rushed her, but he was too slow. She swept his legs from under him. He crashed down, his head hitting the edge of a chair on the way down. He groaned, rolled over, and didn't get up. The third man ran. He made it 2 steps before she caught him. A single movement. Her hand grabbed the back of his jacket, yanked him down, forced his face to the tile. She knelt with a knee on his back and looked around. Everyone was frozen. The waitress had dropped her tray. The cook was peeking through the kitchen door. The old man with the soup gave a low whistle and muttered, "Damn." She stood again, adjusted her hoodie, picked up her letter from the floor and folded it with care. She walked back to her seat, picked up her cup and took a sip, still warm. The man on the floor moaned. His friend lay crumpled beside a booth. The one with the limp was still pinned, too afraid to move. The door opened again. This time, it was the police. 2 officers stepped in, hands on their belts. One looked at the wreckage, then at the woman. His eyes widened. "Elena?" She nodded. The officer lowered his hand. "You're back?" "Just visiting. What happened?" They started it. Figures. The officer glanced at the men on the floor. Then back to her. His expression softened. His voice dropped to something almost respectful. "Still Navy?" "Retired." The second officer chuckled under his breath. They looked at the men again. One was now crying softly, holding his shoulder. Elena Torres sat back down and reached for her letter again. She didn't need to explain anything. Not to them. Not to anyone. She was Navy, and sometimes, even in a place as quiet as a diner, people needed reminding. San Diego hadn't changed much in the years she was gone. The ocean still whispered secrets to the shore. The sun still burned the sidewalks in the afternoon, and the streets still moved too fast for people to notice the quiet ones. The ones who'd seen too much, done too much. The ones like Elena Torres. She lived 3 blocks from the water now. A small apartment above a bookstore where the walls creaked and the ceiling fan only had 2 speeds, off and hurricane. But it was quiet. And after 12 years of combat tours, small boats, and endless sand, quiet was good. Each morning, she ran the pier, still timed herself, still carried weight in a vest. Some habits never leave. At night, she read books with spines that cracked and pages that smelled like old paper. She didn't go out. She didn't answer many calls. She told people she was adjusting. That was the word they all liked to use. The truth was simpler. She didn't trust peace. People in town didn't know much about her. Just a woman with strong shoulders and tired eyes. Some thought she was ex-police. A few guessed military. No one knew exactly. And she liked it that way, but in one of the drawers in her apartment was a shadow box. It held her Navy insignia, her ribbons, a few medals she never talked about, and a small patch from Special Boat Team 12, SWCC, the quiet side of naval special warfare, fast boats, high-risk missions, insert and extract SEALs in combat zones, operate in darkness, disappear before anyone knew they were there. She joined when she was 21, fresh out of college. Her father, a Navy chief, told her not to, said it was harder than it looked, that she'd be the only woman on the team, that they wouldn't take her seriously. She did it anyway, graduated in the top 5 of her class, ran boats through the most dangerous waters in the Middle East, dodged gunfire on rivers too narrow to turn around in, once pulled a wounded SEAL team out of a burning compound under full enemy fire. The after-action report simply read, "Mission success. No casualties. Extracted by L.T. Torres." But she never talked about that either. The only thing she kept was the letter, the one her mother wrote her before her last deployment. Her mother had passed while she was overseas. Complications. No time for goodbyes. No video call. Just a folded letter that came in a military pouch. Her mother had written it on yellow paper with little flowers on the corners. It said she was proud. That Elena was stronger than she ever knew. That being strong wasn't about hiding pain. It was about knowing when to keep going. She read it every week. After the diner incident, the letter felt heavier. Word had spread faster than she expected. The waitress told someone. The cook told someone else. By evening, it was online. No names, but the story was already growing. 3 men, 1 woman. 15 seconds. Some called her a hero. Others said it was lucky. She didn't care about either. The next day, an envelope appeared under her door. No return address. Inside was a photo, a black and white snapshot from her second tour. She was standing beside her team, soaked in seawater, holding her helmet under one arm. There was writing on the back in blue ink, "Still watching. Still proud of you." Doc was their old combat medic. The one who patched everyone up when missions went sideways. The one who never said much, but saw everything. She hadn't heard from him in years. She stared at the photo for a long time. That afternoon, she opened the drawer with her shadow box, took out the Navy patch, ran her fingers over the stitching, then put it back. Some part of her missed it. The rhythm, the clarity. Out there, everything made sense. Rules were clear. Lines were drawn. You knew what was at stake. Here, everything felt soft, blurred, like the world had moved on without her. That evening, she walked to the docks, stared out at the boats. Some were new, sleek, shiny, civilian, but one, docked at the far end, had Navy markings. Training vessel. She recognized the model instantly. Same type she used to run in the Gulf. She stood there for an hour, watching, remembering. Then, without thinking, she reached into her coat pocket and unfolded the letter. The words still made her chest tighten. I know you carry the weight of the world, but you were never meant to carry it alone. She folded it again, carefully, and walked home. She didn't tell anyone what happened that night in the diner. Not really. If they asked, she just said it was handled. If they pushed, she changed the subject. Because to her, it wasn't a big moment. It wasn't a headline. It was just another reminder that even when the uniform comes off, some things stay. Discipline, duty, and the unshakable instinct to protect, especially when no one else will. The next few days passed quietly, at least on the surface. Elena kept her routine. Morning runs, black coffee, a paperback in the evenings. But under her skin, something stirred. Not nerves, not fear, something else. A familiar feeling, the one she used to get before a mission. When the air was still, but everything inside her told her it wouldn't stay that way for long. She didn't talk about the diner incident, but others did. A man at the corner store stared at her a second too long. The waitress from the diner left a note at her door. Just 3 words. "You saved us." It felt strange. Not because of what happened, but because of how easy it had been. Her body reacted before her mind did. The angles, the timing, the control. It all came back without hesitation. And afterward, instead of relief, there was only silence. No adrenaline, no shakes, just quiet. That was what bothered her the most. It meant the switch was still there. That part of her she tried to leave overseas. But there was something else, too. She kept thinking about the third man, the one who tried to run, the one she caught so easily. She remembered his eyes. Not hate, not anger, just confusion, like he couldn't understand how a woman like her, quiet, calm, alone, had stopped them so fast. And that look reminded her of the early days, when she was still proving herself. Back then, she was the only woman in her boat team. The others weren't cruel, but they were cautious, watching her, testing her, waiting for her to fail. She never gave them the satisfaction. One mission, early in her career, changed everything. A SEAL unit had been pinned down in a narrow canal outside Basra. The plan was simple on paper: insert, extract, get out. But the water was shallow, the approach was hot, and the last mile had to be done in silence. No lights, no comms. She was on the wheel. They said it was impossible, that no one could navigate those waters in the dark. She did it blindfolded, pulled the SEALs out under fire, didn't say a word the whole ride back. After that, no one questioned her place again, and yet, years later, in a quiet diner, 3 strangers saw none of that. Just a woman sitting alone, reading a letter. And they thought she was an easy target. They weren't the first. They wouldn't be the last. The memory of the mission wouldn't leave her. That narrow canal. The bullets skipping off the water. The voice of her team leader in her earpiece, calm even while bleeding. "Torres, I don't care what it takes. Just get us out." And she had. She always did. She found herself walking to the pier again. It wasn't planned. Her feet just took her there. She stood at the end. The ocean stretched before her like a memory too big to fold away. Then she saw him, an old man in uniform, navy jacket, hair gone white, leaning against the railing, watching the water. He looked over and nodded once. "You Torres?" She hesitated, then nodded back. "Thought so," he said. "I was at that diner." She didn't answer. "I saw what you did," he continued, "and I recognized what it was." "What?" He smiled. "Discipline." She exhaled slowly. "You Navy?" He turned slightly to show the patch on his sleeve. 26 years. Chief boatswain's mate. Retired now. He looked back at the sea. "You know what people forget?" he said. "That some of the best battles are fought without a weapon. That real strength doesn't announce itself. It waits. And when the moment comes, it moves." She looked out at the water with him. The sound of the waves reminded her of missions long past. Missions that didn't make headlines, that didn't get medals, just scars, and stories told quietly between people who understood. He handed her something. A coin, an old challenge coin. The kind passed down from one sailor to another. It was worn smooth, but the words were still visible. Honor, courage, commitment. "You earned this," he said. She looked at it for a long time, then slipped it into her pocket. "Thanks." He smiled again. "We don't stop being who we are just because the uniform comes off. Don't forget that." He walked away. She stayed. That night, back in her apartment, she placed the coin next to the letter. They didn't look like much. But together, they felt heavier than any medal. She sat at the window and watched the lights of the harbor flicker like stars. Somewhere out there, boats still moved through black water. Missions still launched. Soldiers still waited for someone like her to bring them home. And maybe she wasn't finished after all. 2 days later, the knock on Elena's door wasn't loud, but it was sharp, intentional. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. She didn't need to ask who it was. That rhythm didn't belong to a stranger. She opened the door slowly. Standing there was a woman in a dark blue blazer, her hair pulled back tight, her boots polished to a mirror shine. She wore no rank, no name tag. But Elena recognized the posture, the eyes, the silence. It was someone from the old world. Elena stepped aside without a word. The woman entered, looked around the apartment like she was scanning for exits. That told Elena everything she needed to know. Not a recruiter, not a reporter. This was a message. "You still drink black coffee?" Elena nodded. The woman made herself at home. Sat at the small kitchen table like they'd done this 100 times before. In truth, they'd only met once. A debrief years ago after a joint operation in Djibouti. But in this world, once was enough. "You made some noise, Torres." "Wasn't trying to. You never were." "That's why we liked you." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Liked?" The woman slid a folder across the table. It wasn't thick, but the edges were stamped with the seal of naval intelligence. 3 pages, no fluff, just facts. Elena opened it. Her eyes scanned quickly. Surveillance photos, satellite shots, one close-up of a man's face, scar on the cheek, black market arms dealer, connected to a string of bombings in Yemen and Syria, operating now in Southern California, under the radar, well protected. The name was familiar. She looked up. "This isn't my world anymore. It's about to be. I'm retired." The woman leaned in slightly. "You were never just military. You were a ghost. A weapon we used when the map got too complicated for politics. You're not retired, Torres. You're dormant." Elena closed the folder. Her fingers tapped the table, not from nerves, from calculation. "What do you want?" "Eyes on a meet happening in San Pedro. He moves product through cargo docks, protected by mercs, mostly ex-Russian SF. We need someone who can blend in, get close, and confirm he's in country. You have satellites, we have noise, we need silence. You're good at that." Elena stood and walked to the window. The harbor lights flickered below. "I'm not who I was." The woman stood too. "Exactly. You're better." She left without saying goodbye. That's how it worked in their world. No promises, no thank yous, just information and choices. Elena didn't sleep that night. She read the folder twice more. Then she burned it in the sink. At dawn, she packed a small bag. No weapons, just clothes she could move in, a burner phone, a photo of her mother, and the coin the old sailor gave her. By noon, she was in San Pedro. The docks stretched for miles. Cranes creaked overhead. Cargo containers stacked like Lego bricks. Shadows everywhere. She moved like a worker. Dirty gloves, high visibility vest, cap low over her eyes. No one looked twice. That was the gift of being ordinary. She counted 4 guards, not local, not police, Military trained, but lazy. Overconfident. That would be their mistake. She spotted the target 15 minutes later. Shorter than the photo made him seem. Grayer, too. He laughed too loudly at something one of the guards said, but he looked over his shoulder twice in less than a minute. Paranoid. Dangerous. Cornered. Elena climbed to the top of a nearby container stack, laid flat. Watched through a broken pair of binoculars she found in a fisherman's crate. The cold wind whipped past her, but her hands were steady. She watched. She waited. Then she saw it, a black case. Aluminum. Small. Handed from one man to another with a nod. No words, just wait. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Report? Target confirmed. Transaction completed. Case transferred. Acknowledged. She hung up. That should have been it. But then the wind shifted and the guard closest to her looked up. He squinted. She froze. Their eyes met. He shouted something in Russian. Two others turned. Elena didn't wait. She rolled off the container and hit the gravel below hard, pain spiking up her knee. But she moved. Fast. Past the crates. Into the shadows. They followed, yelling commands, but they weren't as fast. She ducked behind a forklift, then under a flatbed trailer. Her heart pounded, but her mind stayed calm. Back to the fence. Back to the water. She made it. Breathless, she crouched behind a loading barrel and pulled out her phone again. Target burned. Cover compromised. Exfil requested. No reply. She didn't need one. She found a quiet street 2 blocks away. Tossed the phone in a storm drain. Walked into a diner not unlike the one before. Ordered coffee. Black, no cream, no sugar. The waitress smiled. Elena didn't. She just waited for the next knock. The coffee was bitter, burnt, but she drank it anyway. Her hands didn't shake. They never did. Not even now, with bruised ribs and gravel still clinging to her jeans. The diner was quiet. A TV in the corner buzzed with static, half-muted, playing some local news segment no one was watching. The waitress moved between tables like everything was normal. Like Elena hadn't just run from armed men and surveillance drones. She sat in the corner again. Same spot as before. Her back against the wall. Her eyes tracking the door, the windows, the street beyond. She didn't plan on staying long. Just long enough to catch her breath, get her bearings, and disappear again. But that's when she noticed the man at the counter. He was pretending to read a menu, but his eyes kept flicking up. Watching her. Not obvious. Not aggressive. Just practiced. She recognized it instantly. Tail. He had the stance of someone trained, not street. Government, possibly military. Or ex. Either way, not a civilian. And not just curious. She took another sip of her coffee. The man stood and walked slowly toward her booth. Not fast, not threatening, just calm, like they were old friends who hadn't seen each other in years. He stopped at her table and tilted his head. May I? Elena stared. You already are. He slid into the seat across from her. No badge. No ID. Just a calm, quiet confidence that told her he didn't need either. You burned a few bridges today. She said nothing. That container yard wasn't just watched by us. You stirred up people we were hoping would stay asleep. Still nothing. You always this chatty. She finally looked at him. You followed me here? He smiled faintly. We didn't have to. You're predictable. You always find high ground. Then coffee. It's in your file. You read my file? I helped write it. That gave her pause. Name? Not important. Of course. He leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. We didn't expect you to engage. You were only meant to confirm, quietly. Instead, 3 guards are missing. One is in the hospital, and the target vanished before we could move in. He paused. Anything you want to tell me? She shook her head once. They spotted me first. So you improvised? I survived. He nodded, as if that was fair. Still, command isn't happy. They think you've been out too long. Lost your edge. She raised an eyebrow. They're wrong. Maybe. Or maybe they're wondering if you're playing your own game now. She leaned in slightly. I don't play games. I finish them. His eyes darkened just a shade. For the first time, he looked less like a handler and more like someone who had once seen combat too, someone who understood what it cost to survive. He slid something across the table. A phone, plain, black, no markings, one call. One up, that's the deal. After that, you disappear again. What's the target? The man you saw wasn't the only buyer. He's a middle link. The real exchange happens in 72 hours. Location unknown. We need someone close to the edges. Someone who can vanish. Someone not tied to our chain of command. You want deniability, we want results. She picked up the phone. I'm not your soldier. He stood. No. You're something else. That's why we called you. As he walked away, she turned the phone over in her hand. It buzzed once, a text appeared. Track begins now. Signal active. Sea Locker 412, Union Station. Elena left a 20 on the table, finished her coffee in one swallow, and walked out. By the time she reached the train station, the sun was low. The sky burned orange. People moved fast, earbuds in, eyes down, carrying briefcases and baggage and the weight of their own lives. No one noticed her. She liked that. Locker 412 was in the far corner, old metal, a bit rusted around the edges. Inside, she found a single envelope, photos, a blueprint, a key card, and a note. Your contact will find you. Do not seek them. Trust no one. Below that, a name she hadn't seen in years. Marek Volkov. She stared at it. Cold water ran down her spine. Volkov wasn't just a link. He was the source, ex-Spetsnaz, rogue operator, known for black arms deals, covert assassinations, and vanishing without trace. She thought he was dead. She'd hoped. He had been on her kill list once. Then the file went cold, and now he was back. Her pulse stayed steady, but something else rose inside her, not fear, focus. She folded the documents carefully, pocketed the keycard, and walked into the crowd. No plan, no backup. Just instincts. That was enough. The air in Union Station was thick with motion, voices overlapping, shoes clicking on tile, the distant echo of train horns arriving and leaving. Elena moved through it like water, unseen, her steps calculated, her face blank. The envelope in her coat pocket felt heavier with each step, though it weighed no more than a few ounces. It wasn't the paper. It was the name Marek Volkov, once a name whispered between intelligence agents. A ghost from the Cold War who had adapted to the modern black market like a snake shedding skin. He had no allegiance, no country. Just buyers, arms, targets. Elena remembered the last time his name came up. Her team had been deployed in Syria, pulling out NATO contractors from a compromised site. A convoy ambushed. Precision hits. Clean extractions. Every shot traced back to Volkov's men. No fingerprints, just patterns. Her CO had called him the wolf in the storm. Always close, never seen. Now he was resurfacing, and she was being sent to follow the scent. She boarded the train with calm precision. Window seat, left side. Second car. Better visibility. Fewer exits. She didn't check the phone again. She didn't need to. The next step was simple. Follow the trail, verify the contact, survive the meeting. She watched the landscape change outside, urban to industrial, then to sparse coastline. Her mind didn't drift. It sharpened. She scanned reflections in the window. Counted passengers. Clocked a man in a gray jacket who seemed too interested in his phone. His hands didn't move. His reflection told a different story. She made no move. Not yet. An hour later, the train arrived at a quiet town near the docks, a forgotten place filled with rusted cranes and warehouses that had seen better decades. She stepped off, walked calmly, hands in her jacket, and disappeared into the crowd of travelers and tired commuters. The meet was set for 9:04 p.m., abandoned warehouse. No lights, no backup, just like old times. She arrived early. The building smelled of salt and oil and old dust. Roof half collapsed, a chain rattling against a beam in the wind. She found a corner, crouched low, back to the wall, ears tuned to every creak of metal. She waited 30 minutes before she heard the footsteps. Light. Careful. Not Volkov. Someone smaller. A woman stepped into the beam of moonlight slicing through the roof. Young, late 20s. Tactical boots, civilian clothes, a scar beneath her left eye. She carried a tablet and a small bag. She wasn't afraid. She was too calm for that. "You're Torres?" Elena didn't answer. The woman crouched and unzipped the bag. Inside were photos, maps, USB drives. She handed Elena the tablet. Live feed. 2 nights from now. Baja coastline. Private villa, remote surveillance blocked. Volkov's men confirmed. Elena scrolled through thermal images. Boats, drones, 6 armed men. One signature standing still near a fire pit. That him? Yes. Confirmed 3 times by satellite and local informants. What's in the villa? Weapons, drones, possibly American prototypes. Stolen 6 months ago from a convoy near Kandahar. The military buried it. Volkov didn't. Elena zoomed in on one frame. "You're the contact?" "No, I'm the warning." She handed Elena another envelope, unmarked. Inside was a second photo. It was Elena, different angle, taken from a rooftop. Yesterday, surveillance, more than that. Volkov's people made you the moment you entered San Pedro. They let you walk. He wants you close. Why? You embarrassed his buyers, interrupted the port deal, hurt his reputation. That's not something he forgets. Elena stared at the woman. "You're not intel." "Correct. I'm freelance, recruited by the same people who gave you that phone. But I know Volkov better than they do." "Why?" "Because he used to run with my brother." That explained the scar. The posture. The edge. "You want revenge?" "No, I want closure. What's the plan?" "You'll go in alone. Confirm the package. Confirm Volkov. Once you give the signal, strike team moves. 1 shot, fast and clean, and if it's a trap, then you improvise." Like always, Elena stood and looked out through a crack in the wall. The ocean glinted far beyond the rust and steel. Silent. Waiting. She pocketed the photo of herself. Burned the rest in a nearby oil drum. The woman nodded once and disappeared into the dark. Elena remained. Something didn't feel right. Volkov never left trails this clean. He wanted her to come. He wanted it personal, but personal worked both ways. She left the warehouse, boarded another train, and disappeared into the night. 2 days. One chance, she didn't need more. The sun dipped low over the Baja coastline, bleeding orange and crimson across the horizon. The villa sat perched on a cliff, carved from old stone, surrounded by palm trees and silence. From above, it looked peaceful, like something from a travel magazine. But the peace was a lie. Inside, weapons were being unpacked, drones tested. Men moved with purpose, speaking in clipped Russian, Spanish, and English. The perimeter had no cameras, no guards in uniform, but Elena knew better. It was a trap dressed in paradise. She watched it all from a crag above the cliff, tucked between jagged rocks, her body flat against the dirt. She'd been there since morning. No movement, no sound. Just her breath and the distant crash of waves. Volkov hadn't shown his face yet, but she could feel him. She studied the layout through a broken pair of military-issue binos. 2 entry points. 1 main courtyard, 7 armed men, 3 of them constantly rotating patrols. 1 satellite truck parked near the rear with 2 techs monitoring airspace. No visible drones in the sky, which meant they were either grounded or already watching from above. She noted everything. Then she moved. The cliff edge was sharp, and the drop was 40 feet straight to the rocks. But she didn't hesitate. She climbed down carefully, using a rope she'd buried earlier, anchoring it to a rusted steel pin driven deep into the rock. Her hands moved with muscle memory, quiet, controlled. When she reached the base of the villa, she slipped through a drainage channel, tight, dark, but empty. She emerged beneath a patio shaded by weather-worn beams and lush vines. The smell of salt water mixed with oil and sweat. She waited. At exactly 21 the door to the main hall opened. He stepped out slowly. Like he owned the world, Marek Volkov gray at the temples now. Beard trimmed close. Dressed in a white shirt and tan slacks like a man on vacation. But his eyes were sharp, calculating. And when he spoke to his men, they moved like frightened dogs. She felt it in her chest. That same pressure from years. Ago, Syria, Afghanistan, the kind of enemy that made everything go quiet inside her. She moved through the garden like a shadow. 3 guards near the pool. One smoking, another checking his rifle. The third distracted by his phone. Elena slid behind the bar and waited for the right moment. It came 5 seconds later. A glass shattered inside the villa. All 3 guards looked. She moved. The man with the cigarette didn't feel the needle slide into his neck. He dropped without a sound. The second she disarmed with a strike to the throat and a hard twist of his elbow, sending the rifle into the bushes. The third turned too late. She slammed him against the wall and left him crumpled behind a statue. Now she had 5 minutes. Maybe less. She entered through a side corridor, weaving between old stone columns and heavy wooden doors. She found a room lit by soft red lights. On a table, 6 crates, opened and half unpacked. Inside, drones. Not commercial military. One bore a U.S. serial code, Kandahar confirmed. She pulled out her burner phone, snapped 3 quick photos, and sent them to the encrypted contact from Union Station. No reply. Expected, then came the voice, "I hoped it would be you." She turned slowly. Volkov stood in the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, no weapon in sight. But his men would be near, always were. "You've gotten slower," he said, still fast enough. He smiled faintly. "I thought you'd stay buried in the past. But here you are, following shadows. You're trafficking stolen American tech. This ends tonight." He tilted his head. "You think you're here to stop me? You're not. You're here because I allowed it. Because someone wanted you here." She kept her stance, her weight ready to shift. But something in his voice stopped her. "What do you mean?" He stepped forward. "You think this is about drones? Guns, it's not! This was always about you. The American ghost, the one who disappeared. I didn't pull you back into this." "They did." She frowned. "The agency?" He smiled wider, "Not them. The ones higher. The ones who fund both sides and watch the sparks fly." She felt her pulse rise. "You're lying, am I?" He stepped aside and nodded toward the table. There, next to the crates, was a folder. She opened it. Photos of her from the last year. From San Diego, from her mother's funeral, from the diner. Inside the folder, receipts. Money trails. The tablet the young woman had handed her in the warehouse. All planted, all bait. She looked up. "Why?" "Because you're a weapon they couldn't control. And now they want you used one last time, then buried." Footsteps. She didn't wait. She flipped the table, rolled for cover, and shot out the light. Gunfire erupted. Shadows scattered. Volkov vanished into smoke. Elena dove through the window and hit the patio hard. She ran. Into the trees. Toward the cliff. Behind her. The villa lit up. Men shouting. Drones launching. Alarms screaming. She didn't look back. She had what she needed. Proof, betrayal, and a new mission. The waves crashed below as Elena reached the cliff's edge. Boots grinding into dirt and broken stone. The jungle behind her was alive with shouting. Flashlights cutting through the trees. Drones buzzing overhead like angry insects. But the ocean was dark, endless, and open. She didn't hesitate. She jumped. The fall lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Enough to remember the mission that got her discharged. Enough to hear the sound of her mother's voice, reading her bedtime stories about war and women who survived it. Enough to feel the sting of betrayal like it was stitched into her spine. Then water, cold, deep, crushing. She didn't surface right away. She let the current take her, pulling her through darkness until the villa was nothing but a glow on the cliff. When she did rise, it was slow and quiet, her head just above the waterline, her lungs burning. Somewhere in the distance, a boat engine hummed, her extraction point. She swam. The contact waiting on the small fishing skiff said nothing. Just hauled her aboard, handed her a dry bag, and motored away from the coast without a word. Standard protocol. No questions, no names. The less they knew, the safer they stayed. By sunrise, she was back in California. The city buzzed like it hadn't changed. Horns, phones, people shouting into traffic. Elena sat on a bench near a pier, wearing a clean hoodie, wet hair tucked under a cap. The folder was dry, sealed inside 2 layers of plastic, but her fingers still trembled when she touched it. Not from fear, from rage. Inside that folder was proof. Coordinates, contracts, payments. Her image, her movements, her file, not tracked by enemies but by her own people, the ones who claimed to protect her, the ones who sent her into war zones and wrote her out of history. She had names now. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to start something they couldn't ignore. She made her first call to a retired admiral she trusted, the only one who'd ever gone on record saying her dismissal had been political. He answered after 3 rings. "No small talk. I've seen it," she said. "It's worse than we thought. Where are you?" "Moving. Send it to me." She hesitated. "If I disappear, you won't. But if I do, make it count." The line clicked dead. She destroyed the burner. Then she walked. She changed phones, cities, clothes. Every 12 hours. By the end of the second day, she was on a rooftop in D.C., watching the Pentagon lights glow in the distance like something holy. But she knew better. She'd stood in rooms inside that building where truth was edited like film, frame by frame. She wasn't going to knock on any doors. She was going to force them open. The files were leaked at midnight. Not dumped online, not sent to journalists, but emailed directly to every ranking intelligence officer, every senator on the Defense Committee, every agency director who ever signed her orders. No threat, no manifesto, just the truth. And then she vanished again. The next morning, chaos erupted across federal channels. The press got whispers, not the full story, but pieces. Enough to raise eyebrows. Former Navy intelligence operative exposes black-budget arms funneling. Internal oversight launched into offshore military contractors. Anonymous leak suggests American surveillance on retired service members. She watched from a motel outside. Baltimore, feet up on the bed, news flickering across the screen. Her name wasn't in the headlines, not yet. But it would be. Eventually, they wouldn't come for her immediately. First, they'd try to discredit, deny, delay. Standard. Playbook. But Elena knew time wasn't their ally anymore because someone else had joined the game. The young woman from the warehouse appeared on her doorstep 2 days later. No warning, no message, just a knock. "You leaked it?" "Yes." The woman looked impressed. "You realize what you've started?" "I didn't start this. I'm just the last one standing." The woman handed her a flash drive. "There's more. From others. People coming forward. People you inspired." Elena stared at the drive. "I didn't ask for followers. You didn't need to. Truth does that on its own." That night, Elena walked along the Potomac, hoodie pulled tight, the weight of the drive in her pocket. She passed joggers, tourists, soldiers in dress blues posing for photos with the Lincoln Memorial behind them. No one noticed her, but somewhere out there, they would. Someone in a boardroom would read her name and feel fear for the first time. Someone in uniform would whisper her story into silence. Someone behind a screen would look into her file and wonder, how did we let her come back? She stopped at the edge of the water, pulled the challenge coin from her pocket, the one the old sailor gave her. She turned it once in her hand, then tossed it into the river. She didn't need it anymore. She wasn't looking for honor. She was rewriting the rules.